GST compensation cess. Okay, so this is one part that we have covered with regard to the recommendations of the GST Council not being binding in the judgment given by the Supreme Court. Now, let's take a look at this. GST compensation cess specifically refers to IGST. Now, please pay attention to this class. We are trying to decide an entire matter upon GST, which is in the current updates for the last 4 years. GST compensation cess. Okay, let's get a very simple thing cleared out of the way to be able to finish this entire chapter upon fiscal federalism. GST compensation cess. Okay, when we are talking about the concept of a GST compensation cess, the term that we are most importantly in understanding is shortfalls. Okay, so now please just try to focus upon what I'm trying to create as an argument over here. Okay, just take a look at this. Because of the implementation of the IGST class, because of the implementation of the IGST, the Parliament now, because of the implementation of the IGST, the Parliament can now take taxes which are being taken from the state of Karnataka to the state of Uttar Pradesh. So state of Karnataka is a producer state. Okay, class, please focus upon this. Okay, we are nearing the completion of this entire thing. State of Karnataka is a producer state and the state of Uttar Pradesh is a consumer state. Class, please focus upon this clearly. State of Karnataka is a producer state. State of Uttar Pradesh is a consumer state, right? Let's say, for example, if a kind of a trade happens between the two of them on a subject mentioned in the state list, then you know for a fact that an IGST would be given out over here. Right, and now the scheme of course this entire thing is that if let's say 100 rupee sale is made in Uttar Pradesh and 8% GST is paid to this person, this GST is going to be given to the Union of India. The Union of India will have the GST of 8 rupees, and then the Union of India may decide on the recommendations of the GST Council. The Union of India may decide on the recommendation of the GST Council to give this money to the state of Uttar Pradesh. The Union of India may decide according to the GST Council to give this money to the state of Uttar Pradesh. Right? Do you understand? So in a way, this has made an effectuation by which the GST has become a destination based tax, meaning it has to be collected by the state in which the consumption is happening. Right? The indirect taxes are to be collected by the states inside which the consumption is happening. That is what basically we are taking a look at with this entire thing. Now let's say when the states agreed to this entire thing, let's say if you have the number of states like Karnataka, like Andhra, like Tamil Nadu, right? Let's say for example Telangana. If you take a look at these states, these are high producing states. Okay, these are high producing states, and previously these high producing states, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra, previously these high producing states had a lot of tax money coming in from the inter-trade commerce on taxes. You see what I mean to say? That if they are producing in Karnataka, if Nariyal Pani is being produced in Karnataka, sold in Uttar Pradesh, the tax which was coming before GST on Nariyal Pani, sales tax, was being given to the state of Karnataka. So Karnataka was getting the money upon it because it was a state subject. And state subject was interpreted in such a manner that if it is a state subject, it has to be collected by the state of Karnataka only. Do you get the point? So the idea was that the GST or the service tax or the service sales tax would be collected by the state which is producing the commodity rather than the state which is consuming the commodity. It would be submitted in the hands of the state which is producing the commodity. That was the basic idea that was behind the entire activity of understanding this part particularly, right? Now, with the GST, what happens is that the tax which is collected by the state of Karnataka is now to be given to the government of India. And government of India, generally what it is going to do is going to now credit this tax in the account of the consolidated fund of the state of Uttar Pradesh to make the reform in GST, which is to make GST a kind of a destination based tax. That's basically what the state governments wants to achieve, the union government wants to achieve out of this, right? A destination based tax has to be made out of this entire thing called the GST, right? Am I clear now? Now, why did the state of Karnataka, state of Tamil Nadu, state of Telangana, state of Andhra, state of Gujarat, state of Maharashtra, which were high producing states, why did they agree to the GST? You see, the GST was brought as an amendment to the constitution, and it also required a ratification by the 50% of the states. So why is it that the state of Maharashtra, state of Karnataka, state of Tamil Nadu, state of Andhra, state of Gujarat, all these high producing states agree to the policy of the center to take away their tax money and give it to the state of Uttar Pradesh, etc., etc.? Why did they ever agree to sign upon something like the GST and bring about the 101st Constitution Amendment Act when clearly their money is being taken away from them? Why would these states agree? That is the question. Now, the answer to this question is in two parts. One part is cooperative federalism or the accommodative spirit of federalism. That these states were convinced by the union government that it is necessary for the growth of you to ensure that states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, they also grow simultaneously. We cannot have, again, as I mentioned last time, a lopsided idea of growth where some states keep growing, and the other states are not getting there anywhere, right? And it is the responsibility of the growing states, of the developed states, to take care of the states which are needing to develop, and therefore the tax money that you will compromise and would be given to them would be used by these states into making sure that their productivity and their activities are taken into a control, right? They can set up their infrastructure, their industries, their commerce, their trade activities and everything. So that 8 rupee shall be given to them for their own purposes. That is something that you will have to cooperate with. Cooperation के साथ चलना पड़ेगा, accommodation के साथ चलना पड़ेगा, accommodative spirit of federalism. That was a question in 2023 main examination. That was the first reason. So these states agreed. They said, okay, fine. We are going to wait for states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar to catch up, and we will help by the hand of this entire activity for them to get a kind of a catch up out of this. They want, in a way, we agree with the fact that these activities must be done in a way which are proper, and we should wait for these states also to catch up. And if we have to take a haircut financially and give the money that you used to come to us, we will do this, and we will join the tax regime and create the structure of the goods and services tax, right? This was the answer, which was basically the conceptual underpinning of the concept of cooperative federalism, which became the keyword of the GST reforms, also known as the accommodative spirit of federalism, as was mentioned in the 2023 main examination. This was one answer. But the other answer, if you take a look at it, the other answer which was associated around this was the GST compensation cess. The other reason why these states agreed was because of a promise made by the government of India, that the government of India will ensure that a compensation, class, please take a look at this very clearly now. We are ending this part. A compensation must be paid to the states facing a shortfall due to the IGST. So the idea is over here, for example, let's say if you have the state of Karnataka or if you have the state of Andhra Pradesh, which are, let's say for example, their tax collection in an ordinary year is 100 rupees. Okay. Now let's say for example, because of the IGST, they are losing, let's say 15% of their tax collection is being lost. Class, please take a look at this here. If a state like Karnataka is earning 100 rupees in tax collection in an ordinary year, pre-GST. Before GST, the state of Karnataka is earning 100 rupees. If before GST, the state of Karnataka is earning 100 rupees, you get the point I'm trying to make over here? The question is, how much is it earning in terms of taxation coming down because of the imposition of the GST? That's the question, right? And let's say the answer is 15%. 15% GST was earned by the state of Karnataka by interstate trade and commerce, right? 15% is interstate trade and commerce, which means it becomes a part of the IGST. Now, what the union government promised the state of Karnataka was that this, which is identified as your shortfall, this which is identified as your shortfall, the 15% rule which is identified as your shortfall, we will compensate for it. मतलब आपको जो 15% का नुकसान हो रहा है ना, क्योंकि आप पहले वो टैक्सेस अपने पास रखते थे, अब आपको वो टैक्सेस सरकार को देने पड़ रहे हैं, केंद्र सरकार को, और केंद्र सरकार उन टैक्सेस को उत्तर प्रदेश को दे रही है. तो आप ठीक कर रहे हैं, मतलब जो आप कह रहे हैं वो सही बात है कि कोऑपरेटिव फेडरलिज्म होना चाहिए और उन राज्यों को उनका पैसा रखने की अनुमति होनी चाहिए, क्योंकि उनके राज्यों में कंजम्पशन हो रहा है, तो उनके राज्यों के कंजम्पशन को, पैसों को वहीं छोड़ दो तो बेहतर है, जिससे कि वो अपने खुद पैसे को किसी प्रकार से डील कर सके. तो कर्नाटक इत्यादि इन सब प्रदेशों ने कहा ठीक है, हम बात मान जाएंगे आपकी कोऑपरेटिव फेडरलिज्म की स्पिरिट में कि हमको बाकी राज्यों के लिए रुकना है, शांति से उनको साथ में आने देने का समय देना पड़ेगा. ठीक, बात सही है. लेकिन उसके बाद सरकार ने यह भी प्रॉमिस किया, केंद्र सरकार ने, कि आपकी जो शॉर्टफॉल है ना, मतलब आप 100 रुपए कमाते थे, यूज्ड टू अर्न 15 रुपीज, एंड बिकॉज ऑफ द जीएसटी यू आर नॉट अर्निंग 15 रुपीज विच वर अर्नड बाय यू इन इंटरस्टेट ट्रेड एंड कॉमर्स. हम लोग उसकी भरपाई करेंगे, हम आपको 15 रुपए अपने आप देंगे निकाल के, राइट? सो द यूनियन गवर्नमेंट प्रॉमिस्ड टू गिव compensation to the state of Karnataka for the shortfalls that it is receiving because of the implementation of the GST regime. Do you understand the point I'm trying to make, class, over here? Right? And for giving this kind of a compensation, class, to be able to give this kind of a compensation, a new compensation cess was made by the government of India, which is known as the GST compensation cess. भारत सरकार ने एक नया प्रकार का compensation cess बनाया, GST compensation cess. GST compensation cess is applicable on luxury and sin goods. तो मतलब सही बात है कि आप भरपाई करेंगे, लेकिन भरपाई का पैसा कहां से आएगा? We are going to compensate the state of Karnataka, the state of Tamil Nadu, the state of Andhra Pradesh, the state of Gujarat, the state of Maharashtra for the shortfall that they are receiving because of the implementation of the GST. IGST के आने से जो पैसा पहले आपके पास आता था वो उत्तर प्रदेश के पास जा रहा है, जो कि कंज्यूम कर रहा है. तो ये आप कोऑपरेटिव फेडरलिज्म के लिए तो कर रहे हैं, लेकिन इसके अलावा भी हम आपको पैसे की भरपाई करेंगे 5 साल के लिए, 5 years. 5 years योर शॉर्टफॉल्स, मतलब जो आपका पैसा पहले आता था उतना पैसा हम करेंगे. तो मान के चलिए तमिलनाडु के पास पहले 100 रुपए आते थे, अब 15 कम हो जाएंगे, 85 हो जाएंगे. ठीक है, अब 15 में से, मतलब 85 में से जो 15 कम है, द वंस विच आर मिसिंग आउट ऑफ 85, दे विल बी एडेड बाय द जीएसटी कॉम्पनसेशन सेस. तो ये वाला जो पैसा है इसका कॉम्पनसेशन आपको दिया जाएगा. लेकिन प्रश्न ये है कि ये पैसा आएगा कहां से कॉम्पनसेशन देने के लिए, और इसका उत्तर यह है कि एक नया सेस लगाया जाएगा. A new cess is going to be implemented on the people of India who are consuming luxury and sin goods. ठीक है, तो मतलब जैसे मान के चलिए कि अगर किसी व्यक्ति ने एक शैंपेन की बोतल ली इंपोर्टेड, ठीक है, बहुत महंगी वाली, तो उस शैंपेन की बोतल पे जो कि इंपोर्टेड है, उस पे 10% GST compensation cess देना पड़ेगा. आपको पता है cess is a kind of a earmarked tax, right? A cess is what is understood as a earmarked tax. Earmarked tax होता है मतलब cess does not form a part of the consolidated fund of India. जो भी consolidated fund of India में पैसा रखा जाता है उसका कोई दिशा निर्देश नहीं होता है, ठीक है. मतलब जब हम आपसे टैक्स लेते हैं, when I take money from you as taxation money, I don't guarantee to you that this money is going to be spent over here or over here or over here or back to you. I don't give you any such guarantee. That is why it is called the Consolidated Fund of India, as we discussed it yesterday. But when we talk about a cess, जब हम cess के बारे में बात करते हैं, if you talk about cess as a kind of a instrument of taxation, then what we see is that cess is an earmarked tax, which means cess is collected for a particular purpose and is to be given for that purpose only. You have the example of a Swachh Bharat cess or an education cess. Now, if you are paying an education cess or a Swachh Bharat cess, you know for a fact that this money is only going to be spent upon education. So when I am paying education cess, I know that this money is going to be put in a separate account out of the Consolidated Fund of India, which is going to be the education cess account. And while I'm paying 15 rupees on education cess, I know for a fact that these 15 rupees on education cess are going to be spent only upon the subject of education and nothing else. You see, that's basically what we identify and understand with the concept of a cess. Am I clear, class? Okay. So cess is an earmarked tax. It is not becoming a part of the Consolidated Fund of India. And like the other taxes which become a part of the Consolidated Fund of India, in which the guarantee is not given that this money would be spent on this amount or that amount or this category or that category. That has to be decided later on by the parliament where the money will be spent. But the taxpayer is not given any clarity or guarantee कि आपका पैसा ऐसे ही खर्च किया जाएगा. लेकिन सेस में आपका पैसा एक प्रकार से ही खर्च किया जाता है. By the use of cess, your money is spent in one particular manner only, and that is already determined. For example, if you pay a Swachh Bharat cess or an education cess, as I repeat it again, the money which you are paying for education cess or Swachh Bharat cess is going to be given only for the purposes of education or Swachh Bharat. It is not going to be given for something else, and therefore this money does not become a part of the Consolidated Fund of India. It is kept outside or in the public account of India. Do I make my point clear, class? Now, the government of India passed a law creating the GST compensation cess. And the government of India said that the shortfall that has been received by these states for the implementation of the GST, and especially because of the IGST, the Interstate Trade and Commerce, which has led to the taxes of interstate nature move from the producing state to the destination state, it is creating somewhat of a shortfall in terms of the revenue collections, right? So for example, 15% shortfall has happened in terms of the revenue collection with regard to the goods and services taxes after they have been imposed. So now this 15% shall be compensated back to the state which is facing a shortfall for the next 5 years from 2016. And that is the promise of what is known as the GST compensation cess. So along with the GST Amendment Act and the imposition of GST as a composition rule, the GST compensation cess was imposed upon luxury and sin goods out of which money would be taken. So for example, if you're buying a bottle of champagne, and if that bottle of champagne costs, let's say 10,000 rupees, you may have to give a 10% GST compensation cess upon that bottle of champagne. And this pool of money, which is going to be collected by the government of India, the Union of India, will be used to compensate the states which are experiencing a kind of a shortfall in the GST collections. You see, this was the method and the formula which was invented by the state and the government to create a kind of a compensation regime out of the GST for the people or the states who are experiencing a shortfall. And thus you had the creation of the GST compensation cess, class. I hope that you are understanding this point clearly. Take a look at this notification given in 2017. For 5 years after the enforcement of the GST regime, for 5 years, GST compensation cess would be collected And from that fund, all those states who are experiencing a shortfall in GST, in indirect tax collections, their shortfalls will be compensated by the GST compensation cess. Please take a look at this notification of the GST Council class. Please take an understanding of this here. You see the point here? So the Parliament had passed a special law known as the Goods and Services Tax Compensation to States Act 2017. Compensation for what? Shortfall. Shortfall faced due to the IGST, Interstate Trade and Commerce. The central government, on the recommendations of the GST Council, hereby notifies the rate of cess as specified in column 4 of the schedule appended to this notification shall be levied on the intrastate supplies of interstate supplies of such goods, the description of which is specified in the corresponding entry. Now these are what are known as the luxury and skin good. तो अगर आपने मतलब मान के चलिए कभी अपने जीवन में ये खरीदा है पिछले कुछ समय में, तो आपने उस पे इतना GST compensation cess दिया है. Just take a look at this. Pan masala, aerated waters, lemonade, unmanufactured tobacco without lime tube bearing a brand name, unmanufactured tobacco bearing a brand name, cigar and cherots, cigarillos, cigarettes containing tobacco other than filter cigarettes, right? Sin goods, all of these are, okay? Hookah or Godaku tobacco bearing a brand name, hookah, chillum, hookah, Gadaku, etc., etc. Smoking mixtures of pipes and cigarettes, homogenized or reconstituted tobacco bearing a brand name, chewing tobacco, filter khani, snuff, jarda, right? All these items are basically covered under the GST compensation cess, okay? What are known as the luxury and sin goods. Take a look at this. Motor vehicles for the transport of 10 or more persons, including the driver. Okay, so these are the products which were produced under the GST compensation cess, and the government created what is known as a GST compensation cess, where money had to be taken from the people of India and had to be given to the states as compensation. ठीक है, ये वाली बात समझ गए ना आप लोग? अब देखिए इसमें अगर थोड़ी सी न्यूज़ पढ़ते हैं, we just take a look at some amount of news on this activity. शुरुआत में ये सिर्फ 5 साल के लिए दे रखा था, but in 2022 this has been extended for a period of 5 more years. मतलब 5 साल के लिए केंद्र सरकार GST compensation cess राज्य की सरकारों को और देगा. ठीक है, इसको पढ़िए एक बार. This is a news. GST compensation cess levy extended till March 2026. The levy of cess was to end on June 30, but the GST Council chaired by Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, comprising, क्योंकि देखिए 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, you had a very clear understanding that by the end of 2022 this would end. So in 2022 a kind of a lease was given to extend the GST almost by 4 to 5 years. The government has extended the time for levy for GST cess by nearly 4 years till March 31 as per the GST services rules notified by the Finance Ministry. The levy of cess was to end on June 30th, but the GST Council chaired by the Union Finance Minister and comprising of state finance ministers decided to extend it till March 2026 to repay the loans taken in the last 2 fiscal years to make up for the shortfall in the revenue collection. After the 45 GST Council meeting in Lucknow in September last year, Mrs. Sitharaman had said that the regime of paying compensation to states for revenue shortfall resulting from subsuming their taxes such as VAT in the form of national tax GST will end in June 2022, right? However, the compensation cess levied on luxury and demerit goods will continue to be collected till March 2026 to repay the borrowings that were done in 2020-21 and 21-22 to compensate states for GST revenue loss. ठीक है, इसका थोड़ा सा हम एक अलग सिस्टम क्रिएट करेंगे. ये 2020-21 में हुआ था, just to be able to finish that part. But overall, this is basically what we understand if a question comes on the GST compensation cess, which is dealing with the concept of shortfall. ठीक है,